Hi, it's Andy again, and today, Wednesday, I'm going to give us another aspect of the Gentiles. So we've had the faith of the Gentiles on Monday, the fullness of the Gentiles on Tuesday, and today we are talking about the fruit of the Gentiles. Now, when we talk about fruit, we can think of harvest. We might think of vegetables and some sort of crop would be harvested. And the word harvest is specifically what Paul uses. He uses that word in Romans 1:13 that says when he comes to Rome, one of the four reasons, if you watch the message on Sunday, one of the four reasons that Paul gives for wanting to come to Rome is to reap a harvest, to have some fruit. And the fruit comes from the Gentiles. But we must understand that the fruit is not simply people. Paul is not going to limit his understanding of harvest to just people. He's going to understand harvest in a much broader sense, and that sense can still apply to you and I today, even if we're not in Rome, have never visited Rome, will never visit Rome, whatever the case might be. So the reason we see this is because we can look at least three different ways that we need to express our faith as a part of this harvest. First off, Paul wants a harvest. He wants this fruit. He wants it of people. This is why he is going to Rome. But as people begin to understand who Jesus is and what Jesus has done for them, we are to live our lives. And so many people will call this lifestyle evangelism. And there's nothing wrong with that term. There's nothing wrong with that concept. The idea is that we live our lives according to what the Bible would have us do, according to the way that Jesus lived. And as we do that, other people will watch us and want to live that way as well. The problem is that is not complete. Okay, so lifestyle evangelism is important, but it is not complete because, as Paul says in Romans 10, faith comes by hearing. He does not say faith comes by watching others live their life right. It is important that we live our life right. The reason why we give Jesus so much credence is not only in what he said, but that he backed up everything he said with what he did. Jesus did that perfectly. You and I do not. We are hypocrites. So, but we can still live our life accordingly, and then we can share as we are living our lives, as we are following Jesus with our lifestyle. We can share with our mouths what our faith is. So we can express our faith by our lifestyle. We can express our faith by our words, which we must do. But then there's a third way that we can express our faith, and that is by our finances. And this is the tie-in for the word harvest. In Romans chapter 15, verse 28, Paul says that he has collected a harvest that he is taking back to Jerusalem. Now, if you read the context of Romans 15, that part of Romans 15, what you're going to find out is that as Paul has visited other churches in and around the area where he is, he's writing this from Corinth, but he's visited other churches in that region, he has taken up a collection. And he is taking that money back to the church in Jerusalem because they have financial needs. And so he has collected a harvest from the Gentiles for the help of the Jews, primarily back in Jerusalem, but for the church in general back in Jerusalem. And it's the same Greek word, karpos, Karpos, that he uses in Romans 1:13 about the harvest he wants in Rome, as well as in Romans 15 that he says that he has collected monetarily to take back. So what we can understand from this is that when Paul talks about harvest, again, he's not just talking about people. He's talking about for the overall betterment of the church. Let me explain. Paul wants and needs to come to Rome by his own desires. He needs to come to Rome so that he can impart some spiritual gift, that wisdom that I talked about the other day. One of his reasons. But he does so that he can help build up the church. Obviously, it was Jesus who said in Matthew 16, I will build my church. It is not Paul who is building churches. It is not us who is building churches. But we partner with Jesus. We serve Jesus in a way that helps to build those churches for Jesus. And so by wanting a harvest, what Paul is saying is that I, Paul, want a harvest of people that I can then continue to share the gospel with. They've come to Jesus now, but I want to continue to share the gospel with them so that they will live their lives for Jesus. And as they live their lives for Jesus, they will begin to give their resources to Jesus. And as they give their resources to Jesus, we can go to other people and create a harvest there to continue to do the same thing. So again, the idea of a harvest for Paul, the idea of the gospel for Paul, isn't just one of, let me share the gospel with you and then be done and on my way. For Paul, the idea of the gospel was much more encompassing. It was about sharing the good news, which is what the gospel means, so that people could receive Jesus as Lord, that they would begin to live for Jesus as Lord, and that they would be able to give to Jesus as Lord so that other people would have that opportunity as well. And what was good for Paul as it relates to the gospel and as it relates to the harvest that he was looking for related to the Gentiles and the Jews for that matter, is true for us. So we need to be a people of faith like the Gentiles. We need to be a people who seek the fullness, and we need to be a people who seek out fruit, but not just that people might come, but that people might grow, that people might be, and that people might help build by their living, their sharing, and their giving, their sharing by mouth, and their giving, so that other people can know and love the Lord as well.